Hello, everybody, and welcome to the July 2021 office hours with my, I'm Guinnessstache, and Amos couldn't make it today. He had some scheduling conflicts. So, but we're here with Žiga, Tomaž, and Branimir, as usual. How you guys doing?
Hello, very good, very well, thank you. And yourself, Jason?
Not bad, not bad. Like I was just telling these guys, we got a tropical storm coming, so let's hope the internet hangs on for the next hour and a half or whatever. So
stay safe.
That's right. All right, I'm gonna jump right in, guys. So first question is, how the bleep did you guys bag Bob bleeping Metcalfe as an advisor? So so that was really exciting news. People were just floored by that, and I know I've watched a lot of Metcalfe's videos too, and the more you watch of him, the more you respect the guy's talent and his genius, and the more you really can relate a lot of the stuff he's saying to the ODN with, going from a hardware perspective to more data and linked data. And so, I mean, how did you do it? Did you guys approach him? Did he approach you? Like, was he really excited when he saw this and kind of was like, wow, this is, I see this really being the next big thing, or how did that work?
Branimir, I thought you were gonna jump into, but perhaps a few words about the advisory board. The advisory board of Trace Labs is something new that we just recently kind of launched and wanted to bring as many, or at least a handful of very, very good people aboard. And Metcalfe just happens to be one of the first ones. Not the last one though, and also not the only one with such a tremendous background. And yeah, as you said, it's qualitatively, Metcalfe brings a lot of kind of validation to what we do in Trace Labs. So building OriginTrail as a core developer, and of course on a high level, OriginTrail uniqueness is that we can connect data from multiple sources. And when we talk about the knowledge economy, it's becoming quite apparent that we build value through connections, and the more connections that we manage to build, the bigger the value, the bigger the knowledge, the value of the knowledge. And it seemed to kind of correspond very well to the way also Bob Metcalfe managed to built and then later on popularized Ethernet in the 70s. So it's an exactly the same blueprint for growing the value, for growing something which is going to likely expand into many different spheres of human activity, much like Ethernet did, and later on internet. And using the same kind of scientific approach towards valorizing, and also towards even kind of selling or convincing users to get on board decentralized knowledge graph for multiple purposes. And it seemed that the scientific approach Metcalfe took in the 70s corresponded very well to the growth of the decentralized knowledge graph. And Branimir is going to most probably tell you about his own experience with Bob back in Texas. But it seems that both trajectories, so trajectory of Ethernet in the 70s and trajectory of OriginTrail right now, have very a lot of things in common. And when we spoke to Bob last time, so the first time when we mentioned this possibility of him being aboard the Trace Labs advisory board, and also not only helping us kind of internally with advice, but also providing crucial input for the next iteration of the white paper, which is essentially going to be showcasing how OriginTrail, through the growth, can increase value for its users. And there is a saying, which is a very interesting one, which goes something like, the knowledge is the only thing that expands in value when being shared. So the more you share the knowledge, the more you share kind of data points, the more you connect data points, creating useful information, creating useful knowledge, the bigger the value. And OriginTrail to date is the only fabric globally which is capable of providing global knowledge based on three core value propositions: so integrity, interconnectivity, and interoperability. And we're happy to have him on board. That said, he's not the only one. We're gonna see some very, very interesting people. Some of them launched IPOs recently. Some of them are in charge of funds, and yeah, perhaps not to go too much into details and leave Branimir to explain more of his background with Metcalfe.
Yeah, I think the question was around how we got Bob to get on board, and we actually met quite a while ago, and we stayed in touch. So the way we met was actually at this competition we were present in 4 years ago. 4 years ago, 2017, back in the day when OriginTrail was being transitioning from the traditional centralized solution that at the time it was towards the decentralized one, and we actually received the People's Choice Award. So at the event, we were working with Professor Metcalfe to basically mentor us. He was there to help us guide the ideas, and we discussed back then already a lot of the stuff. The ideas obviously matured and materialized in the ODN and all of the technology we built. And then over the years, we've been in touch. And then, of course, now recently, since we're working on really quantifying certain aspects of the value that can be captured by the decentralized knowledge graph, this is where an opportunity showed up that actually Bob can join in and help with his experience and knowledge, actually apply Metcalfes Law together with some other things so that we can actually provide a theoretical framework for assigning value to a certain knowledge resource. And that particularly means...
Is it just me?
Nope. I think Brandon got
I think it's
disconnected.
Branimir.
Oh, all right. Well, I think the line of thought that he was on was the fact that from the perspective of timing, we are working on these challenges of how to really utilize the graph and the properties of the graph to help create value for a certain knowledge resource or a certain, let's say, a certain data set that's being entered into the knowledge. So you look at what things that are already in the graph and in the DKG, and what does this new asset brings to the table, and then ascribe value to it by utilizing these different kind of theoretical frameworks, including, and so obviously, Bob working on the Metcalfes Law, which we all kind of know and learn about. When you're looking at the decentralized knowledge graph, it very much applies, especially if you look at it from the knowledge graph, from the knowledge resource perspective. So as a knowledge resource exists somewhere, when an additional resource is being added, it's not just a linear expansion of value, but it brings more value to the entire network, because it connects to so many other different things that perhaps are already in the DKG, or opens up new connections for others to be able to anchor into. So it's never just the sum is bigger than its parts, if you will. So it's largely bigger. It's an exponential function, or thus should be shown.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like, with Metcalfes Law, it really was originally designed with the idea of hardware nodes in place, and
yeah.
So it blows your mind when you realize that when you translate that to the ODN and you start, those data points kind of become nodes, right? So now you exponentially end up increasing that Metcalfes Law to some degree that probably was never even envisioned from the hardware perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, does that sound about right, Branimir?
Is Brandon back?
Yeah, I caught that. The question. So sorry, guys, for jumping off. I don't know what's happening with me.
No problem.
But yeah, it's essentially that is true. So traditionally, Metcalfes Law is being observed from the perspective of kind of a physical network. So you'll see examples of phones, and then you could see a more sort of new application that has been demonstrated with social networks. So you have people with their profiles somehow connecting, like friends on Facebook and so on. And then the more friends you have, the more reach you have, like the more likes you have on Twitter or whatever follows, the wider, and obviously everybody's fighting for this, right? So it's very quantifiable value. And the thing there is that actually, if you research a little bit about Metcalfes Law, you can find that it actually follows the Facebook revenue, for example. If you take that as kind of a proxy for value, actually grows within that, let's say, the range of the function that you would plot for that type of a Metcalfes Law curve. And so traditionally you had this physical thing, then you had this notion of people on social networks, and then the next stage is really the notion of any object. So, connecting, and when I say object, that can be a digital object like an NFT or token, whatever. It can be a physical thing. It can be a concept. It can be a document. So the point being that something. So the premise is that something that is more connected to other things, something that has more relations to whatever digital, physical objects and whatnot, has more value in a certain way, and this value can actually be quantified. And another approach, which basically is also based in a way on Metcalfes Law, is the way Google has been using really their algorithms to apply to search. So when you were like back in the day, before Google was the coolest search engine, search was really all about strings. So you would type in some words, and it would try to match these words to what it finds on the internet. And Google actually, when they introduced the knowledge graph, they said it's about things, not strings. And things are really concepts, objects, rather than just a word like, I don't know, OriginTrail, or it's more about like the notion of what OriginTrail is and what all things connected. So what we're really looking at together with Professor Metcalfe is how to apply these things that Google has applied together with his law to create a way to actually attach value to the knowledge assets really. And for example, if you look at Google, one of the most famous algorithms, which has recently, I think a few years ago, the patent rights have expired for it. It's called the Google PageRank algorithm. This algorithm basically says that if there's a website to which a lot of other websites point to, there's a lot of links for your website somewhere around the internet, that means your website should be more up or more closer to the first page or on the first page of the search for a search term. And so what happens is the search term actually becomes the concept. So if you're like, you go to Google today, you can actually buy, you could pay to get higher on that list for a certain search term, which literally means that the value of that search term is something that Google measures, and it measures through this, not just the PageRank algorithm, there's other things as well, and some things that obviously are not public, we don't know of. But the point there being is that it's already proven in the Web 2.0 world, and now we want to take that to the Web 3.0, and we want to do that with well, basically the best minds in the world at this moment.
Yeah, and it's funny, like when you talk about Facebook, the Facebook example, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, Facebook is massive, right? But it's still a data silo at the end of the day. I mean, all that data is held inside of Facebook. And that's why we had things like Cambridge Analytica and why they sold it outside, because that's when the value came in. But I see the ODN kind of being bigger than Facebook in that it's not something that one entity is controlling the data and then decides who gets it and decides who buys it. So now you have this global network that anybody can buy and sell the data. And I think that's where like another one of those aha moments when you realize how big the ODN can be. And you think, again, Facebook's massive, but it's really a centralized solution still. So it's really still small. So I think it's mind blowing when you just think of the scale of how the ODN can take that data to a whole new level. So, and I think Bob's a perfect person to have there too for that. So
Exactly.
Cool. All right, let's go to the next one. How is the knowledge graph affected when a job gets completed? Does the TGS decrease? So say you have an apple, right? And an apple gets sold, it gets eaten or whatever, and there was a record of it in the TGS. And we really don't need to know what happened to that apple 10 years later from now or a year later, but what does happen with data once it's it's come to its end of life from a job, is there some sort of record or link still to that data in the database, or is it just pretty much pruned out at that point?
It's a very good question. I'll try to give a short answer. So the short answer is it depends. What it depends on is really on the configuration of the DH nodes that are running the network. So depending on which nodes host which data points or which parts of the graph, the way they're configured, that's what's going to happen. So you can configure a node to prune the data after a certain point in time. So for example, a holding job expires today, maybe your node will keep it for another month if that's configured so. And point being that for as long as the nodes keep it, it's going to be part of the graph. Now, will the nodes keep it just for the amount of time that the job holding period is on? That's up to the nodes. And if they deem to find it valuable to keep this data forward, because again, it can connect to something else, then that's up to them. But essentially, once they remove it, then this no longer contributes to the total size.
Great. So it's good to know. So I mean, it's not like you're going to have this infinite, repository and turn into a data dumpster. It's going to only hold what it still needs to hold, really. So.
Yeah, and it's also a good way, segue to also discuss about value, because there's certain frameworks where, for example, if you look at some sort of a trading perspective, the data input is really some sort of a market state or price. That in that point, the value that's more current, closer to this point in time, right, is more valuable because you want to know the exact price right now. And which does not mean that the price from like a day ago or a month ago is not valuable. You probably want to do something with it, but it's less valuable. So in this also applies to obviously a specific different use cases. This is just one use case for how data gets observed. The context matters. So sometimes the context is going to be, like you said, we've eaten an apple 10 years from that moment on. Does it make sense to spend some resources to keep this replicated across a decentralized network? Probably not, but it's going to be up to the implementers. And it's really, it's different for every use case.
And I think laws will govern that too, right? Like if the FDA comes out and they require that you keep a history of this type of product for 3 years, for example, because, I don't know, some sort of medicine, or then really that governs kind of, really what makes sense to have that on the ODN for versus the person uploading it or holding it or whatever. So cool. How does the team see growth potential on the ODN metrics in coming years? Do you see enough potential demand or inquiries to take job metrics to 1 million jobs per day in 3 to 4 year time frame? So like how do you see the growth in a few years? I mean, how we see the amount of jobs or even TGS level? I mean, is it going to be like hockey stick up for the next 10 years, or are we going to, how do you envision that looking in the next 3 to 4 years?
It's almost like saying, what's the weather going to be in 3 years? Most likely the weather is going to be hotter and hotter, considering that the ice caps are melting. And we did make predictions that the number, like the daily number of jobs, will go up tremendously in 3 years time from now. And what is even more important is that the total graph size will grow tremendously, and this will in turn translate into greater value for its users, which will additionally attract jobs, because in order to create knowledge, in order to create value in the graph, and in order for customers and users to gain more benefits, they need to interact with the network. And one of the lead metrics to the total graph size, of course, is the number of jobs. So we do expect, and there should be a tremendous increase in the number of jobs as well. However, it's very difficult to say what the exact number is going to be. Is it going to be in hundreds of thousands of jobs per day? Is it going to be in millions? It all very much also depends on the cost per unit. So the unit economics of the jobs in what we have seen so far is that when we are able to kind of make unit economics better for the users, there is a tremendous uptick in the number of jobs, because we can the users themselves, they can test, they can deploy their use cases, and they can quickly scale up without pardon me, without breaking the bank. And this is also very important. And what you have recently witnessed with the upgrade towards the dual chain ODN was a tremendous increase in the number of jobs and in the expansion of the total graph size. So a lot of these similar or updates which are in a way affecting the unit economics are planned for the future, and we expect those updates to radically improve the capability of users of the ODN to essentially deploy lots of more jobs than so far. This is on the technical side. On the adoption side, there is clearly a lot of interest for the OriginTrail. We can say that because we, as a core developer, also validating the value propositions of the network, we have witnessed a lot of demand. Clients coming to us, also us having to say to some of potential users that now is perhaps not the right time, because we as a core developer need to both develop the protocol, develop the ODN, support it, and at the same time validate and service the most important clients. So in order to expand on the usage of the network, we are also kicking off the so-called Ortega project, which of course is not a project which will end in a month. It's something that will be an ongoing effort, also involving community. And so far, we have gotten to the point where we see that there are some activities which we might be able to launch very soon. And these activities are primarily going to be aimed towards the developers. And in essence, the aim here is to kind of deleverage Trace Labs, which already at this point is already very much involved and already has its capacities taken by existing partners, by existing clients, and by having other developers understanding the value of the decentralized knowledge graph and giving them appropriate tools. We expect that this is going to be perhaps the most important driver for the node star metric, which is total graph size, as well as the perhaps other lead metrics, such as the volume of data, total number of jobs, etc. So definitely, I mean, it looks very, very well. I mean, so far you've seen the hockey stick already gaining shape. And our job is essentially to maintain this hockey stick as long as possible. And what is going to be interesting, what is interesting, and if you check one of Metcalfe's videos, you'll see that in the future, of course, things do not go and continue the hockey stick to the infinity. At certain point, the world is limited, and also let's say take Facebook for example. Facebook can only encompass as many users as there are people on the planet, and this is where things kind of settle down a bit. But we're definitely at the offset of the development of this radically different technology that could even be said to kind of making internet good again for its users, not only for supply chains, but essentially from all other human activities. Supply chains being just perhaps one human activity that is giving us enough validation to start from, and then essentially deploy decentralized knowledge graph for many other use cases. And what we're working on right now, so going from Ortega again back to the Trace Labs core development company, is also to expand capacity of the core developer itself, so the Trace Labs, also involving advisors from many very respectable fields, and at the same time presenting OriginTrail in a way that it does not kind of insinuate or point towards supply chains only. So having this kind of a zoom out perspective to what OriginTrail is capable of. And was interesting to see Branimir having, I think yesterday you Branimir had a discussion with Ivan on tech, and you can see that people actually, some of them, even the experts, they only now start to get get it. They only now start to understand how widely applicable OriginTrail is, and that it's not only about tracing food stuff or tracing whatever. It's about every human activity potentially, and this is also indicating that we're just in the beginning of something which might expand into something really, really big.
Well, and like you said too, I mean, it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around, but once you do, then you have the aha moment, and then you're like, this is amazing. Let's go with it. And then once you have enough people who have those aha moments, then it's easier to really get the word out there, or for other people to understand, and it again exponentially grows, and people get more interested, and adoption comes on. So
yeah, exactly. And we need to take into consideration that there is no such technology as OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. Sure, we get questions. So how do you differ from other supply chain projects? But in essence, we're not blockchain for supply chains. This is just it's a wrong conception which we try to kind of offset. But it takes time. We've been in supply chains for almost a decade now, and we're proud of our background. But at the same time, the technology is vastly more capable, and it's a unique technology. No one is building a network which is capable of connecting data, even data coming from other blockchain ecosystems. No one is providing this layer, and it's just a matter of time when we're going to see aha moments squared, so exponential growth of the aha moments in many communities.
Yeah, you see a lot of multi-chain out there now, but I don't think a lot of those multi-chains are really doing anything. It's like, so it's good to see that the ODN is actually bringing meaning to the word multi-chain and bringing value to it. So that's awesome. Let's see. From where does the NOS acquire track? Is it DEXs, SEXs, or the OT pool? We haven't heard about NOS in a long time. And is NOS still NOS is NOS, right? But as far as any of the token buying mechanics, has that changed at all, or are there any updates in that area that you can even share?
Yeah, so NOS as a kind of technology is obviously being utilized in the use cases that we've seen. And as such, it's obviously utilizing Trace and obtaining Trace. I mean, it gets it from Trace Labs, and Trace Labs obtains it, at like any other kind of rational actor at a given time. Texas, DEXs, whatever's the best opportunity to be a participant in the market. Outside of that, we see that it's the perception that maybe shouldn't exist is that the NOS is like a gateway or like a bottleneck for DCs to enter the OriginTrail decentralized network as such, right? NOS is like as Trace Labs tool. It's important. It's being utilized, but as such, it's not something that's like a must-have for anyone to use the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. And this is something that through the activities of the Ortega project that Žiga was mentioning, and the Evangelist programs and all that, it's going to be even more apparent and even more tangible in terms of how really this can. I mean, how the DC nodes can and are accessing the network by without necessarily going through NOS, but independently. So that's really kind of just the perception that maybe wouldn't be good to be perpetuated. Or I'm not saying that the question came from that perspective, but if it did, I think it's just important to say that it's by no means it creates a gateway that it has to be used. It's something, obviously ODN is permissionless, and the same way as this for the data holder nodes, it's for data creator nodes as well.
And I think it's one of those questions that comes up just because, I mean, the token model is so new for anything out there, right? I mean, like it's still kind of that unicorn, idea. Like, how does companies procure these tokens to use? And so I think I always used to joke around, like they're not jumping on KuCoin with their ledger and buying some track. Like, it's not how companies work. So I think that's why the NOS thing.
Yeah. From that perspective, of course, it's very important. Yeah. And, with all the adoption, it does mean that Trace is being utilized. And that's how kind of it does provide that value proposition, of course.
Yeah, great. Let's see. In a previous office hours, Branimir mentioned that the network needed optimizations like pruning to be implemented before it could handle more jobs. Are there any updates on pruning or additional improvements that could increase the job flow? When can node runners expect this? And obviously, I got a lot of pruning questions. I mean, that's an obvious one. So this is the pruning question, everybody. If I didn't read your exact question, this is the pruning question. So Branimir, is there anything you can speak about as far as the pruning for the nodes?
Yeah, we had first of all, we had actually a very cool meeting yesterday with a couple of people from the dev community, which also highlighted this problem as being like one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue that node runners are having, which is excess space being taken on the nodes. And we're aware of this problem. We actually investigated it quite a lot. We found several optimizations that can be done, and we are rolling them out in stages because we sort of create one and then we test it and then we roll it out. So there's going to be there's already been some updates when it comes to, so the pruning feature is out, and then we expect in the next release, which is coming next week to test it, to actually additionally prune the nodes. And the reason why we actually haven't rolled this out previously was that we have created the whole thing. The problem was that it could run for a very long time on some nodes and could actually block the node for a certain amount of time, like an hour, which is not a really good idea. So putting this in a more optimized process where the node doesn't potentially get stuck, and that we're sure that everything is going to be all right on all the hundreds of nodes on the network, took a little bit more time. So, but that's coming out next week. So most likely next week testnet, and then the week after on mainnet, but could be sooner on mainnet as well. So we just need to make sure that what we see on testnet also looks good. Apart from that, there's also things that we've discussed. Want to give a shout out to Calvin from the community, who's been building some awesome tools for the ODN. Some tools like one of them named with a funny name called the Doc Sucker, which actually tries to kind of tear out the node from Docker, and which is in some ways a good idea. So Docker is a great tool, but as anything, it has its like positives and negatives, right? The positive side of doing everything with Docker is it's quicker. You need less knowledge. You do it in a few commands. Docker start OT node, right? It's there. What the downside is that it takes additional resources on the system. It constrains some things. So there's a layer of caching that the Docker does, that we actually discovered on some of the nodes that we've been testing with. The Docker wouldn't prune. So it would prune the database, but somewhere in the background, Docker keeps something. And we're trying to find like what's the 100% bulletproof way to prune this cache from Docker. And then there's another thing that we discovered, which is the caching of the database itself, Arango specifically, that we are also tending to. So in the next couple of releases, these things are going to come out, and it should prune the network, the nodes quite a lot from stale data. However, this is, I'm speaking about the next really weeks, months potentially, but really weeks. The more interesting stuff coming out is going to be, which is a little more long-term, is going to be actually published relatively soon through technical documents like RFCs and the documentation, where the upcoming version of the ODN, the upcoming version upgrade, will introduce additional scalability and actually vast scalability improvements in the coming period. So the idea is to create it, the ODN in such to improve the ODN in such a way that the publishing of the additional data points and indexing more information in the graph is going to be much less costly for everyone. For example, for a DH node to not have to spend too much resources, but also for a DC node to be motivated to post more jobs. And part of that effort is also the AAP plugin around the market that we mentioned, which optimizes, but also on the technical side. So we want to really make it to be even more efficient, that anybody's, for example, gonna be anybody publishing some data online, like data that's associated to some DLT object, for example, like an NFT, would be very interesting to publish on the ODN rather than I don't know, another place. And so there's going to be a bunch of technical updates that we'll be seeing. The first one's coming next week, but in the upcoming weeks as well. But also kind of a more major set of updates coming in the upcoming major version release, which is scheduled for, well, basically the second half of this year.
Great. Awesome. It's funny you talk about running nodes outside of Docker. I mean, a lot of us OGs have been here forever, but I just remember that's the only way we used to run nodes was outside of Docker. If you remember, testnet, everything ran outside of Docker. So it's just funny, like going back where people are thinking like, oh, we should run this outside. We used to do that for a year on testnet all the time, building up our Ubuntu systems. And so
that should kind of become the default in a way. I mean, Docker is great for some things, but like I said, it's going to consume some things that, it just takes up space. And
overlay 2 grows a lot in Docker images and stuff like that. So
but at the time when we introduced Docker, it was kind of the best solution for everybody because it was just too complicated. We're talking about 2018. People are still getting to know what blockchain is about, and then we're introducing this notion of a decentralized knowledge graph, which is basically blockchain meets knowledge graph, and then you have to configure it, and you've never done something like that before. So Docker was like a nice packaged way where you can just like do a couple of commands, and even that is not super easy. The point being that we need to change the default from going obviously away from the default thinking of the community from Docker to like Dockerless, and make this more streamlined and easier to set up. And this should be much better for everyone, really, spending less resources on the network.
And speaking of resources, just a public service announcement. A few people I've helped lately, and even myself, I didn't realize at first that every so often Docker allows you to increase your storage for free, but they don't necessarily tell you. So if you go into your nodes and you look at the different plans, you might already be paying, say, $10 for X amount of storage, and you can still pay $10 and get 20 gigs more of storage, but you just have to go in there and enable it, and it takes only like takes like a minute or so. So make sure you check that on your nodes. Free storage, might as well get it. Is the Evangelist program going to start this month? Is it necessary to take Ivan on tech courses before we can apply? Anything you can speak on the Evangelist stuff?
Yeah, so to the second point, of course, it's not necessary to take the courses. However, the courses, I think, are very good. Amos made a tremendous effort to create such great content. So, however, the Evangelist program is kickstarting very soon, this month. So we're going to see a lot of new content around that, and also opportunities to engage both by community members as now, but also as developers, as being able to more easily build on top of the ODN. And there's going to be quite a lot of interesting stuff coming out. So expect it very soon.
Awesome. Good update. Thank you. When can we expect expansion to other EVM compatible chains like Polygon, BSC, Near Protocol, Corda, etc.? So being the multi-chain, and I know you're developing the frameworks to more easily onboard some of these to these blockchains, and especially when you look at something like Corda, we know that's actually used in enterprise today. I know Quant integrates with Corda, and there's a lot of enterprise use there. But when do you see more of these EVM compatible chains coming on to the ODN?
Yeah, so as you said, it's becoming it's become very easy to do this actually from a technical standpoint. So we're actually finalizing the framework to be published to actually see how this can be done from a technical perspective. We're speaking with some teams already, from the ones that you've mentioned, but basically we see that coming to fruition relatively soon. So the ODM multi-chain vision is something that is an ongoing thing, and as soon as there's interest and demand for a certain implementation, that's something that as easy as it is to do, also makes sense to do. So one sort of just note there is that currently it has to be an EVM compatible DLT network, L2 blockchain, whatever. So something that can run EVM smart contracts that are written for the ODM. However, in the future, it's going to be interesting to observe the compatibility expand in the Polkadot ecosystem, because EVM compatibility is only the start. We don't intend to stop there. So the actual compatibility developed on a more native level for substrate, for example, in the INC language, or generally more tighter substrate integration, would bring it so that really the whole network of Polkadot blockchains would be able to use it as well without necessarily having to care about EVM compatibility. But that's something in the kind of a more further horizon at this moment. Right now, it's we're focusing on EVM compatibility, and there is quite a few interesting projects like the ones you mentioned that can quickly be integrated.
Right, and it has to make sense. I mean, you're not just integrating stuff for the fun of it. It's got to be a use case and a business use case. So, you know, so any random EVM chain, it's going to have some value to it. I assume so. Let's go to the next question. Would it be more beneficial for someone to run a node on OriginTrail rather than just hodl their track tokens? So, I mean, as a node runner, of course, I'm going to say it makes sense, right? But I mean, I know there's some people still scared out there. So what's your opinion on that?
We do both.
Yeah, me too. What do you know? Well, I mean, to be honest, like a node's kind of like a wallet in a way, right? I mean, no matter what you put in there, it's just another place to store it. And it can even add some other layers of security when you think about it, because if your wallet were to ever get compromised, you have it on a node, and the hacker might not know that you even have them in this, you know, deposited into your profile. So
yeah, I mean, in any way you get into interaction with the OriginTrail ecosystem makes a lot of sense as a developer, as a holder, as someone who's using token actively. And the good thing is OriginTrail since years ago already has not only been you know, promising utility, but utility is here. So it's there is always, you know, there are a lot of ways to get involved in the ecosystem, and I would just advise to just be close as a developer, holder, node runner. It's fun.
yeah, actually, you know, speaking of, there's one jumping around for a second, but a lot of new openings at OriginTrail. How is the hiring going? How is it difficult to hire good talent given the war on tech talent? I mean, you were just talking from a development standpoint. Has that been difficult?
It's definitely, there's a lot of noise, so we need to be kicking quite hard. We are making progress in both here in Slovenia and Serbia, where we mostly keep the hands and the brains, mostly brains, a lot of brains, big brains. But we're also happy that we're now expanding to other places in the world. So we got a very good candidate from Africa, from Nigeria. Hopefully we can, you know, also see a very good pulse in Africa in terms of the usage. Also in terms of the, you know, the user base, we see India is becoming an important market, apart from the North America, Europe, and other usual suspects. So, you know, in order to build something which is applicable globally, we see also that we need to seek talent globally, and we are making progress. We would have hoped that the progress would be faster, but we're happy with every candidate that we get, solid candidate.
Yeah, you got to be choosy, right? It's got to be.
Applications are open.
Yeah.
Though, anyone listening?
Yeah, I see them all the time. Like, that's a good problem to have when you see constantly tweeting that there's open positions. It's not like you're tweeting that you have to get rid of positions, so that's a plus,
Yeah.
right?
I just checked out from a hotel this morning, and a guy, a receptionist, asked me about job postings. I wouldn't even know that he knew anything about Trace Labs, but he was asking for his girlfriend.
Oh.
People, we are apparently very successful at reaching the target audience, to say the least.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a good feeling. That's like your first, like,
Yeah.
wow, I feel like we kind of really made it, you know? The bellhop is asking us for jobs. So.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. The guy wore a mask, so you don't know his identity, whereas they know your identity. It's
Yep.
it's both good and bad feeling.
Right. Let's see. Do you feel that OriginTrail has a technology that will make it inevitable for organizations to adopt, or will OriginTrail have to battle for market position, i.e. Snowflake or the graph? And I mean, it's a fair question just because there's a lot of misconceptions of what some of these other projects I think do out there versus what OriginTrail does. Like, yeah, Snowflake's kind of like another permission solution, but everybody knows that they did one of the biggest IPOs in history, but it's not decentralized in any way. And then you have the graph, which is obviously doing extremely well when you look at market cap positions and stuff like that, but they're obviously not doing the level of, you know, data exchange that the ODN would be doing. So do you see any of these kind of platforms becoming competitors from an enterprise perspective?
Well, I mean, from the offset, our positioning has always been going into blue ocean, although blue ocean strategy means that you are identifying a niche which is either underserved or not served at all. And there are no competitors typically in that niche. And OriginTrail is part of that niche, which we can call a linked data with integrity niche, kind of. And there is no such solution as OriginTrail. And although, again, people connect us with blockchains for supply chains, we are oftentimes being used by the users which are already working with the likes of IBM, with the likes of some permissionless or semi-permissionless networks for some other purposes in complement to, you know, the solutions which might seem to be competing solutions, but they're actually not. So we're essentially building a set of tools along with the network that could easily be used with all the most established solutions, or even the ones that are coming into the market. And you can also see, I mean, there is a great overlap between users we service and users others are servicing, like the Scan Trusted Factory being used by the likes of the Walmart, Department of Homeland Security. At the same time, data sources. You can connect DNVGL as a data source with a company that is also working with someone who might seem to be the competitor, but it's actually not. So our strategy has always been seeking blue oceans, building solutions for problems that are very big problems, but there is no sufficient solution there yet, and we don't see that the competition will pop up very soon. And if it does, it's going to be most likely something that will append to OriginTrail in order to make it stronger, more ubiquitous.
Right. And I tell people all the time, something can seem so massive, but it could still be like a silo in itself. Again, when we talk like Facebook or so when you have these snowflakes of the world, that's great that they're allowing some of these businesses to connect their data silos from around the world, but it's still a silo. So it could leverage the ODN at some point. So, and just again, makes you realize how big the ODN really can get from all these different systems connecting to it over time. So awesome. I think I'm going to combine these two questions. Is when will we know more about the incentives for participating and supporting OT in the parachain auctions? And how will you fund future parachains since more track can't be printed? It sounds like there'll be a crowd loan. So I know we're still waiting on a lot of info. I know we're still waiting for Parity to even announce auctions for Polkadot. And then when they do, we're still waiting for things like unbonding periods that they got to go through at first and stuff like that. So can you speak to those questions at all about basically the incentives for participating, and then how do we fund it going forward?
Yeah, I mean, for us, sustainability is always at the core, right? And if that means perpetuating certain good thing for OriginTrail network, or if it's supporting sustainable practices, it's like it falls in the same bracket. So we would never engage into something that didn't, or we wouldn't like to see something become a part of the ecosystem which doesn't have a outset to make it sustainable. And it's the same with the parachain, right? So you're looking at a new kind of a blockchain layer that is running, but it also provides some value, right? And through that value that it provides, it should also grasp it. And through the grasping of that value, there should be a tokenomics designed there to allow for funding the future bits for the parachain. In a very abstract and generalist terms, I think that's as much as we can at this point put out. So there should be a tokenomics and mechanics that allow for within the parachain itself to allow for future funding to be possible. In terms of for the first one, and we definitely don't want to do something just to make like the first parachain happen and then be like, yeah, whatever, it's going to end in 2 years or in a year or in whatever periods you are, and then what? It doesn't make sense, right? So it needs to have that it needs to be more perpetual, more long term. And as it is, kind of also then the first one becomes a part of that type of a thinking. You're looking at it, how to really make it not to, do anything that would harm a long-term positioning. And of course, before we can really kind of unveil all the details around the parachain, like you rightfully mentioned, we are waiting for that information to come from the Polkadot side or from Parity side in terms of how, when will they feel ready to reveal more. From the indications that they put out previously, it would have been possible to assume that this would be already available at this point in time. Of course, currently we don't have that yet out in the public, so we have to wait for really a decision to be made, and then at that point we'll have the exact timeline. The more information also for making certain choices become available, and then you can really reveal all the mechanics around the crowd loan, around how these would really all things will work, including how the tokenomics would work on the parachain itself, because again, the things are connected together. But it's exciting, like it's good. We're looking forward to that, and yeah, as soon as that kind of hygienic factors are happening, then we can tell more.
And are we still waiting for that? Are you still waiting for some of that info to really understand what the next step is with the pooled tokens? Because I know that's a question we get asked a lot. Is as far as the tokens that are locked, is anything changing there?
Yeah. So I mean, despite the trajectory or the changes in trajectory with Polkadot roadmap, we still have all the options and possibilities to pursue the desired outcomes. And one of the desired outcomes for us, community, and everybody else in the ecosystem is to unlock all the tokens that were staked when in March, and also helped us to launch the dual chain and hit all the targets for the growth. And this outcome of unlocking tokens, we are making sure that is not going to be impeded or prevented by Polkadot's internal or their own trajectory. We have multiple options available, from exploiting the other chains that are already available on OriginTrail, or even potentially adding another chain and essentially putting the framework that we're now constructing to work, and proving how additional connection can be made, and then deploying those funds through that side. So there is no, I think there should be no fear, and we can, you can rest assured that the tokens that were staked are going to be unstaked in a time frame that was originally envisaged. It would be nice to see Polkadot following the trajectory that was initially designed, but we do have like instruments and options in place that we can still pursue all the outcomes that are desirable, regardless of what happens with Polkadot. And Polkadot will happen. I mean, OriginTrail, the Starfleet chain, is going to be deployed as a parachain, but we need to make sure that we're not dependent on anyone. So we are always free to pursue our outcomes, desired outcomes, whilst still, counting on the most beyond state-of-the-art tech, and Polkadot obviously is like that.
And now that we've seen Akala and Moonbeam already go live, I mean, in theory now those are blockchains that essentially parachains that could connect to the ODN too, right? I mean,
Sure.
And then over time, like it gets easier and easier to connect those. So you can even leverage those in some way, I'm sure.
There is a massive potential. There is massive potential, but we need to, like, I mean, we understand that our community has certain expectations, and we need to make sure that those expectations are met, and not rely on any other ecosystem, which we already leverage. But nonetheless, we need to be independent in pursuing growth, pursuing all the expectations that are there, and having tokens stake is a huge commitment from our side, and we need to make sure that we follow up on what we have promised in the beginning of the staking period, and we are still following the trajectory towards that desired outcome. This is what we can say for sure.
Great, thanks. The knowledge tokens and marketplace will launch Q3, Q4. Is there a role is there a role for the community to help with this? So can the community in any way help with the whole marketplace launch?
We were talking, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities over the course of the Evangelist program and all these activities taking place to be really more hands-on when it comes to the entire decentralized knowledge graph kind of ecosystem, including all the knowledge tools coming out, starting from RFCs, providing comments and getting feedbacks, getting active there to really help us design how this could best work, all the way through then also as we see the releases happen on testnet or on mainnet after that, to be there and be engaged with the code itself even, and after that also of course in the proliferation and the adoption phase. So like there's definitely not going to be the lack of opportunities to get engaged over the course of the next couple of months on all knowledge tools, not just the marketplace.
Awesome. I can't wait to try selling stuff on it. Maybe I'll just sell some virtual hugs or something.
Hey, dude, you should. You could.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, here's one I've never seen someone ask this before. I'm sure others have asked it, but just in case no one has, any updates on T1 exchanges? Have you been in contact with any in any way or applied for any exchanges since the last office hours? And Branimir was so disgusted he just left.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's his opinion.
We have, in short, there is more exchanges we talk with, but then again, it's impossible to say what are their internal timelines. Hopefully, we'll see results very soon. But we actually talk about it on every open office hours. What we can do right now and say is that we're seeking all possible ways to expand our outreach when it comes to new exchanges, and at the same time to the exchanges that we're already talking to, and seeing if there are any other levers that we can utilize to expedite things.
All right, awesome. Is the ODN being adopted by the FDA track and trace vaccines or other medical products? Blink once for yes, twice for no. Well, I mean, as we all know, like the ODN isn't going to track. I mean, the FDA is not going to track things on their own or anything like that's not what they're there for. But did you see a lot of? I mean, they were with you guys on that webinar not long ago. So have they saw some things in the ODN that they thought was pretty cool, and they see a lot of power and potential in it?
Yeah, I mean, we are not just FDA, also with some other governmental bodies. We've been in contact in the past and now, and I mean, obviously there is a very compelling use case in many supply chains, vaccines and pharmaceuticals, food being just some of them. Typically, governments do not use track and trace systems, so they would be potentially using the infrastructure if something goes wrong. And again, if you look at one of the more established uses of OriginTrail within the trusted factory, you can also see that governmental bodies have a way to query data using the scan trusted factory. So in a way, they are already we are already enabling governmental use of OriginTrail. Of course, OriginTrail upgraded through certain additional layers, and we believe that the use of OriginTrail in governmental sector will also expand. Here in Europe as well, we see that the governments in European Union are investing a lot into new greener technologies, and blockchain and decentralized solutions seem to be as a priority for multiple sectors, from public sector to smart transportation, smart cities, etc. And this is where also governments play a role, either as a user or more oftentimes as a funding entity for such initiatives. And we are expanding and seeing how we might deploy our team also to handle and seize such opportunities, which are of course arising both in the US, Europe, and potentially also somewhere else.
And speaking about the scan app you brought up, someone asked, can the scan app for BSI be replicated to other certification bodies? So have you seen other certification bodies?
It is already. If you look at, if you watch the liftoff event where Dan, talked about who's the user and who's additionally a potential user of the Scan Trusted Factory, you can see that there are mostly, majority of the certification bodies are somehow encompassed in the trusted, in the Scan Trusted Factory as a data source, at least. So in a way, they can very easily start using Scan Trusted Factory not only as a data source, but as a data viewer or someone who's actively supporting their clients to have a better overview of what's going on with the auditing reports. So it's very expandable, and the beautiful thing is we don't need to expand our own sales team because we have the likes of the British Standards Institution who are already successfully working with many companies across the globe. And we see that the multiplication effect or the compounding effect of whatever we have built so far is already appearing in real life. So short answer, yes,
right.
It is.
Yeah,
of course.
I mean, that graphic that he put out pretty much sums it all up, where it shows on both sides the entities, the viewers, and stuff like that. So cool. Will OriginTrail have a fund or grant for developers willing to build on OriginTrail decentralized network? And I think back to the open call, that's how Kakaxi came about, right? I mean, it was through the open call. Do you see more events like that happening to lure more?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely looking into enabling that. However, it needs to be sustainable. We don't want to be just spraying and praying funds around. I think there is no project in the world that has proven that this would be successful. Also, we did, at least I would not say a mistake, but we tested this kind of approach with the first open call we did back in 2018-19, and we saw that there was a lot of kind of moral hazard in a way, where people syndicated their capabilities and voted on this or that project. And we need to find a better way of doing that. We need to find a way that is sustainable. Plus, we need to make sure that projects are doing it for the sake of usability. So they're not doing it just for the sake of getting the grant, but actually to build something which actually makes sense. And we're huge advocates of an approach which actually allows companies or individuals, developers, to understand how they will be making money by using OriginTrail on a standalone basis without even getting any extra impetus. The grants should only be kind of a cherry on the top of the cake, whereas the usability and the potential revenue chances that they create by using OriginTrail should be number one priority for builders. And this is why we need to be offering tools which are offering the seamless use of OriginTrail, and yes, also providing certain grant opportunities which are there, but not, they should not be the main motif for using the OriginTrail.
Right. Cool. Let's see. We've seen updates related to the knowledge economy on GitHub. Anything you can discuss on it, timeline, and what to expect? I know we touched on a little bit already, but are there any timelines we're looking at for the knowledge economy?
Yeah, very soon, within probably next week, but definitely this month, we will be releasing a lot more information on the tools that are to be the pillars for the knowledge economy. And this is going to be out through a very detailed RFC. So there's going to be a lot of information, a lot more information on that coming out. And also there's going to be additional technical documentation also coming out, which we invite everybody to actually come in and jump in with questions, ideas, and generally feedback. All this is super useful for us because anytime well, first of all, it's not easy to write something that's very, or at least universally understandable. So all the questions help make it more understandable, and us to sort of implement this feedback helps us as well communicate that further in a better way. But also in terms of catching all the potential flaws or maybe some, let's say, blind spots we haven't covered. This is what we would really appreciate a lot of help with, especially from the node holders perspective. So yeah, expect a lot more information coming out very soon, and it will be great to see comments on the RFCs as soon when they're out and when you guys have a chance. It's going to be a nice summer or weekend read for somebody to jump in and throw in their opinions and ideas and make this whole thing better for everyone.
And one of the questions was about the white paper and that for the knowledge economy, but so we should probably be seeing something about that pretty soon too as well.
Yeah, and the white paper is already in the works actually for a long while, and it's being worked on together with collaborators, outside collaborators, such as Professor Metcalfe. So because of it being a wider team that's working together through this, well, sort of period of vacations, even though it's a pandemic, it's probably gonna take a little bit more time, but we expect it to be out this summer. So it's gonna be a nice summary for everyone.
Yeah. Great. Polkadot have created a number of tools to help those developing on their network. When we get a parachain, will those same tools be useful for those developing on the ODN? So once it's substrate, does it become that much easier for all these different substrate projects to really build on top of the ODN?
Yes, that's the short answer is yes. So if you look at the ODN and think of it as a layered protocol, so we have the consensus layer, which has multiple implementations on different chains. So if we look at the Polkadot chains, all of it is pretty much based on substrate. So any extension like a substrate palette or a substrate off-chain worker, stuff like that can be built on a substrate level could directly be used with the ODN. You can observe them in two different ways. One is they could operate directly on the consensus layer, or they could actually operate within the service layer, depending on what type of service it is. For example, a service that would push data from the DKG to a blockchain or some smart contract would be actually part of the service layer. It's not utilizing the blockchain for consensus and storing what ODN requires. So in very short, the ODN itself being infrastructure on top of which things can be built also extends to tools that are existing within ecosystem on top of which you can build as well. So an example would be that building, let's say, a custom pipeline for any smart contract in the Polkadot space. And custom pipeline can be anything. This means any data transformation, extraction, anything that ends up really kind of being some custom code. And in this level, Substrate is definitely one of the tools that we can consider being sort of associated tools to the ODN.
Great. Yeah. I mean, there's even some projects out there you see, I think they're working on like DIDs, for example, on Polkadot. So you think that's an awesome fit for the ODN. And it kind of goes into this next question somebody asked, and if illegal data is uploaded to the ODN for sale, is there anything to stop malicious buyers from retaining this data? And when I think of this, I think of like the Bitcoin hack with Binance, right? And so you have this huge knowledge graph that can pretty much tell you and give you all these links and connections to who's who and what came from where and what talked to what. So I would think even if somebody was uploading illegal things on the ODN, there's going to be this huge graph that you can use as like a chain analysis and link back where, build the picture of where that might have came from. Or so is that correct that, using the knowledge could help prevent some of these things from happening on the ODN?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think there's a couple of aspects to this question. One is the aspect of kind of like the question goes a little bit in line with the usual one for Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin should be, I don't know, banned because criminals use it, right? But so
Right.
they do use for cash as well, right? So
Yeah,
or
your computer or your internet.
or yeah, your truck. So in that sense, this is one of the aspects. The other aspect is what happens when that actually gets on the network. And one of the awesome parts of the leakage and all of these connections we mentioned is, let's say you put some legal data and or some bullshit data, just putting it out, excuse my French, putting it out there like that. But basically that it's a big question how much of other knowledge will refer to it. Actually, that's part of what I explained yesterday to Ivan, which is, you know, when you have some knowledge resource that exists and that everybody somehow speaks about it, all of this data gets connected and into a growing knowledge network of that specific thing. While, you know, something else that doesn't connect just kind of stays there like a kind of like a, you know, a dead end in a way. Right. And in that sense, this could also happen to potentially to legal data, but that's not to say that anybody can be stopped. It's a permissionless system. You can publish whatever you want. And then obviously you can see who published it because of the identity that is associated to it. Now you don't see that it's, I don't know, Jason, but you see a certain identity. So, and then the node runners who are actually hosting this data, if they have a problem with it, the worst case you could do is actually, you know, remove that piece of data and actually get out of the holding job, which has some consequences, but it's not gonna kill you or like get you in court.
Right. You know? And that's the thing too, is like you can always, that's one of the beautiful things of blockchain, you can always trace back where the source of funds came from. So ultimately you're still going to always, even when you link like a profile identity,
it's like the worst network probably to use.
Yeah, exactly.
Similar to why the hell would you use Bitcoin for? Like, so if you have something untraceable like cash, just do it with like, it's, you know, you wouldn't want to go somewhere where like the transparency and integrity is a core value of proposition. So
yeah, exactly. Sooner or later, you're going on these fiat off ramps and stuff. You're going to get picked up. It's a matter of time. So, yep. Let's see. Last question. Will the knowledge tokens become more valuable than the track token? So could that be a thing? Could you ever see a knowledge token being worth more than track token just because of the knowledge that's behind it?
I mean, theory, right? Anything can happen in practice. I don't know if that's really within the domain, because it's will like inevitably it spills over to the value of OriginTrail ecosystem as a whole as well, right? So you'll have that. You know, it's not like really, it's not the same. How do you call it?
Well, track still backs
it's
the
not eating
token.
its own children, right? So
yeah,
like it's multiplying the effects. So you get more out of it if there's valuable things that are on the network and they are represented by the knowledge token. Then obviously trace is going to be used even more, and then that's going to create value. So it's more about complementary feeding off of each other, building more positive effects versus being really like, I can't remember the word. It's slipping my mind, but maybe Žiga will remember.
Cannibalizing.
Correct. Yeah, Thank you very much.
But yeah, I mean, just track it. I mean, if anything, knowledge tokens will help fuel the track token because it's backed by it. You know, it's kind of like it's reserve currency.
They create activity, they create value generation. So they bring the spur. It's a positive thing for Trace.
Great. So this isn't a question, but I just want to take a minute and say thank you to everyone who is working on OriginTrail project. You promised us jobs and adoption, and you have delivered time and time again. Well done, and big thanks from a humble community member. Can't wait to see the future that holds for OT.
Nice. The future's ours.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you as well. Also, you know, just a few things to expose. I mean, we have a great community website, which is being regularly updated with all the recent information that we publish. Also, the OT Hub is becoming an invaluable resource for everybody. running nodes in the system, with the most recent addition of everybody being able to see what's the live holograph size. That's really, really cool. So I guess we all deserve compliments, everybody contributing in any way to the ecosystem, and that's what makes us strong.
Absolutely. All right,
And on that
guys.
bombshell.
All right. Well, hey, another good office hours, and we hit a lot of different areas. So it's always good when we try to get in as many as we can, and address the big community concerns or whatever. So appreciate it, guys, and I'm gonna let you guys go off to your weekend. Go have some adult beverages and kick back and relax. So.
Oh yeah, there's weekends are quiet time to work. You know what I mean? Thank you,
that's
Guinness,
right.
for taking the time.
No problem, guys. It's always a pleasure. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.